Usually, when we talk about city politics, there is this expectation of straightforward cause and effect.
Right, like a simple binary.
Exactly. A city needs money, so they pass a tax.
Well,
Or a city wants less traffic, so they install a stop sign.
it seems pretty logical on paper.
Yeah, it does. But then you look at something like the soda tax, which cities like San Francisco and Philadelphia have rolled out, and suddenly the logic gets tangled up in this massive knot.
Oh, it really does. It becomes a total economic paradox.
And interestingly enough, that exact paradox perfectly explains the single most important concept on the microeconomics exam you're studying for right now.
It really is the ultimate test case for human behavior. I mean, Philadelphia taxes sugary drinks for two very distinct stated reasons.
Right.
First, they want to make people healthier by, discouraging them from drinking so much sugar.
Which makes sense.
And second, they want to raise money to fund city programs, specifically pre-K education in Philly's case.
Which, I mean, that sounds like a win-win in a political press release, right?
So absolutely.
But if you stop and think about the actual mechanics of what they are trying to achieve, those two goals are completely at war with each other.
They really are mathematically opposed.
Yeah, because if the tax works perfectly as a health initiative, meaning it completely stops people from buying and drinking sugary soda, the city raises exactly $0 for its pre-K programs.
Exactly. And flip that scenario around. If the city successfully raises the $400 million it originally projected, well, that means people are still buying and drinking millions of gallons of unhealthy soda.
They're completely ignoring the tax.
Right. The health initiative utterly failed in that scenario. How governments or businesses predict which way that pendulum will swing, it all comes down to a single word: elasticity.
Which is the core focus of today's deep dive. We're going to unpack this so you can walk into your exam understanding not just the math, but the actual psychology behind it.
That's the best way to learn it.
Before we hit the college-level textbooks and the formulas, we need to understand the concept intuitively. So forget the jargon for a second. It's always a good idea.
Think of elasticity as measuring your escape routes. If a store manager reaches out and pulls the price lever, jacking up the cost of an item, elasticity basically measures how many escape routes you have as a consumer.
I like that. That is a much better way to look at it than just, memorizing a sterile definition.
Like a rubber band versus a thick rope.
Yes. Let's look at a scenario where you have 0 escape routes. The thick rope. The classic textbook example here is gasoline. Or even better, a critical medication like insulin.
Right.
If the price of gas goes up by 20% tomorrow, you are trapped. You still have to drive to work. You still have to take the kids to school.
I can't just suddenly pivot and buy a horse because gas went up 50 cents.
Exactly. You don't have an immediate alternative. Because you have no escape route, your demand is unresponsive. It's like pulling on a stiff rope. Economists call this inelastic demand.
Okay, so I am forced to absorb the price hike. But let's say I'm walking down the frozen food aisle, and my favorite specific brand of frozen pizza has doubled in price. That's a totally different situation.
Yeah, I am not trapped at all. I have a dozen escape routes. I can buy a competing frozen pizza, I can order delivery, I can grab a bagel, or I can honestly just eat leftovers.
You have options.
Because I have options, my buying behavior is highly responsive to that price change. It snaps like a rubber band. I will instantly drop that specific pizza.
Which means your demand for that pizza is elastic. It stretches and moves. So to bridge this intuitive idea to the official college-level terminology you actually need to write down for your exam.
Let's hear it.
Price elasticity of demand is the measure of the responsiveness of the quantity demanded to a change in price.
Okay, the measure of the responsiveness of the quantity demanded to a change in price. Having the concept down is great, but to pass this microeconomics exam, you have to be able to calculate that responsiveness.
That's where people usually get tripped up.
Right, and my first instinct when looking at this material was a bit of confusion, because doesn't the slope of the demand curve already tell us how much quantity changes when price changes?
It seems like it should, yeah.
It's just rise over run, basic algebra. Why do economists invent a whole new complicated formula to measure something a simple line graph already shows?
That instinct makes perfect sense, honestly. But relying on slope introduces a massive fatal flaw called the unit trap.
The unit trap.
Yeah. The measurement of a slope is entirely dependent on the arbitrary units you choose to measure with.
Okay, wait, I think I see what you mean. Let's use the Coca-Cola example from the source text.
Perfect example.
Imagine a soda tax causes a $1 price increase for a 2-liter bottle of Coke. Because of that price hike, the quantity demanded drops from 10.2 million bottles down to 10.1 million bottles.
Okay, we are tracking.
If I calculate the slope using dollars and millions of bottles, the math gives me a slope of negative 0.1.
Seems simple enough on paper.
But the math gets totally warped if I just decide to use different units. What if I measure the price in pennies instead of dollars?
Right. A $1 increase is a 100-cent increase.
The actual real-world price is the exact same. But if I calculate the slope now, using 100 instead of 1, the slope drops to negative 0.001.
A huge difference on the graph.
Or what if I measure the price in dollars, but I measure the bottles in individual units instead of millions?
Right.
Suddenly my slope is negative 100,000.
Exactly. And the underlying human behavior didn't change for a single second. The exact same number of people bought the exact same amount of soda.
Right.
But depending on whether the analyst wrote down dollars, cents, thousands, or millions, the slope makes the demand look either incredibly steep or incredibly flat.
Wow. So a store manager using cents would look at their graph and think they had a totally different customer base than a manager using dollars.
It would be complete chaos for comparing data.
So how do we fix it?
To bypass that chaos, economists abandon absolute numbers entirely. They use percentage changes.
Okay.
A 10% drop in soda sales is a 10% drop, whether you are counting ounces, liters, or cargo ships. So the basic foundation of elasticity is the percentage change in quantity demanded divided by the percentage change in price.
Okay, but wait. Calculating percentage change gets mathematically messy depending on which direction you are traveling on the graph, doesn't it?
It does, and this brings us to the specific formula you absolutely must memorize for the exam, the midpoint formula.
Right, because the problem with standard percentage changes is the shifting baseline.
Exactly.
Because if I'm looking at a price dropping from $20 down to $10, that's a 50% decrease. Sure. But if I'm moving from $10 back up to $20, that's a 100% increase.
Which is maddening for an economist.
Yeah?
You are measuring the exact same physical gap between the exact same 2 points on a demand curve.
But the math lies to you.
Right. Depending on whether you are walking up the stairs or down the stairs, the distance mathematically appears different.
Hence the midpoint formula. Doing math via audio is always rough, so let's keep the numbers dead simple for everyone listening.
Good call.
Instead of anchoring your percentage to your starting point, you anchor it to the exact middle.
The midpoint.
Right. So if our price moves between $10 and $20, the difference is 10. The midpoint, the dead center between them, is 15. You just divide the $10 change by the $15 midpoint.
That is the perfect way to visualize it. So on your exam, the formal structure looks like this. First, find the change in quantity and divide it by the average of the initial and final quantities.
Got it.
Then you do the exact same thing for the price. Change in price divided by the average price. Finally, divide your quantity result by your price result.
There is a critical rule to remember about the final number that equation spits out too, because price and quantity almost always move in opposite directions, right?
Yeah, when price goes up, people buy less.
So the formula is inherently going to generate a negative number.
That's right. But in economics, we generally drop that minus sign and just look at the absolute value. This is the absolute value rule.
Very important for the test.
Super important. On your exam, if that absolute value is greater than 1, the demand is elastic. You have escape routes, you are highly responsive.
The rubber band.
Right. If the absolute value is less than 1, the demand is inelastic. You are trapped, you are unresponsive, the stiff rope.
And in the rare case that it is exactly 1.
We call it unit elastic. A 10% price drop causes exactly a 10% increase in quantity demanded.
Okay, so now we have the concept, and we have the math to calculate the exact number. But why do different goods have such wildly different scores?
The determinants.
Yeah, why does gasoline sit at an inelastic 0.2, while a specific brand of cereal has a highly elastic score of 2.5? We talked about escape routes intuitively, but how does the textbook break down those escape routes?
The sources outline a few core determinants, and the most important one by far is exactly what you just described, the availability of close substitutes.
How easily can I swap this product out for something else that does the exact same job?
Yes. Coca-Cola has many close substitutes. If they raise prices, you grab a Pepsi or a Dr. Pepper. So the demand for Coca-Cola specifically is highly elastic.
Makes sense.
But what if we zoom out? The broad category of soda has fewer substitutes. If the price of all soda everywhere goes up, you might still buy it because you specifically want a carbonated, sugary drink.
Right. You don't just want a glass of tap water.
Exactly. So broad categories tend to be inelastic, while specific brands within that category are elastic.
But doesn't time change that dynamic completely?
Oh, immensely.
Like if gas hits $5 a gallon today, I have no substitutes. I'm stuck paying for it to get home.
Yeah.
But if gas stays at $5 for the next 5 years, well, my escape routes start opening up.
That is the second major determinant, the passage of time. Give consumers a year or two, and they will buy hybrid cars. They will organize neighborhood carpools.
They might even move closer to their workplace.
Right. Time creates substitutes. The longer a price stays high, the more elastic demand becomes, because human beings are incredibly resourceful at finding workarounds.
That brings up another interesting wrinkle from the text, how we define the market itself. It feels similar to the substitute issue.
It is deeply related. If you define a market very narrowly, demand is elastic.
Like a specific gas station.
Yes. The demand for gasoline from the specific station on the corner of 5th and Main is incredibly elastic. If that one owner raises his prices by $1, you just drive across the street to his competitor.
But the demand for gasoline in general across the entire city is inelastic.
Exactly. Although there is a fascinating anomaly in the source text regarding market definition and Amazon.
Oh, let me guess. You would think the demand for books bought specifically from Amazon would be highly elastic.
Because
if Amazon raises a book price by $2, I can easily just click over to Barnes & Noble or an indie bookstore website.
That is the logical assumption. But the data actually shows that demand for books from Amazon specifically is surprisingly inelastic.
Why, really?
Yeah. People do not see other websites as valid substitutes anymore. Consumers value the frictionless checkout, the Prime shipping, and the Kindle ecosystem so much that they simply absorb the price increase rather than leave the platform.
Wow. It is a testament to how building a walled garden destroys a consumer's escape routes.
It truly is, which transitions perfectly into the next factor, luxuries versus necessities. A necessity is, by definition, something you cannot escape.
Right. Milk is a necessity for families with young children. Its demand is inelastic.
But front row concert tickets, total luxury. If the ticket price doubles, you just don't go. Your demand is elastic.
Got it.
The final everyday determinant is the share of the good in the consumer's budget. Think about table salt.
Okay.
You buy it rarely, and it costs a couple of bucks. Even if the price of salt doubled tomorrow, it takes up such a microscopic fraction of your monthly income that you probably wouldn't even notice.
Let alone change your cooking habits. Salt is inelastic.
But a new car, a 20% price increase on a $30,000 car will absolutely force you to change your behavior. Big-ticket items that eat up a massive share of your budget tend to be highly elastic.
Here is a crucial warning for your exam prep, though. The textbook brings up these extreme theoretical cases, and professors love using them as trick questions.
Yes, the polar extremes.
The absolute extreme of inelasticity is called perfectly inelastic demand. It is represented as a straight vertical line on a graph. The price can go up to infinity, and the quantity demanded doesn't decrease by a single unit.
The classic example is a life-saving medication. You need a specific dose to survive. If the price drops, you don't take extra. If the price rises, you can't take less.
But the danger here is confusing a normal inelastic good with a perfectly inelastic good.
Which happens all the time on tests.
Do not draw a perfectly vertical line on your exam when a question asks you to draw gasoline.
Please don't.
Gasoline is inelastic, yes. But it is not perfectly inelastic.
Yeah.
When prices get punishingly high, people eventually cancel road trips or consolidate their errands.
The line still slopes downward. It just slopes very steeply. True vertical lines are incredibly rare.
Okay, so now that we understand what elasticity is and what causes it, we have to bridge the gap between the classroom and the boardroom.
My favorite part.
Why does a grocery store manager, or a city mayor for that matter, actually care about this mathematical formula?
Because it always comes down to total revenue. Total revenue is simply price multiplied by quantity.
Right.
And knowing your product's elasticity tells you exactly what will happen to your bank account if you mess with your prices.
So if I am selling something inelastic, something where my customers have no escape routes, they have to buy it regardless.
Exactly. If demand is inelastic, raising your price increases your total revenue.
Even if a few people quit buying it.
Yes, you will lose a tiny handful of customers on the margins, sure. But the higher price you're charging the captive audience that remains more than makes up for it. Price and total revenue move in the same direction.
But if your demand is elastic, meaning your customers have plenty of options, and you raise your price,
you will destroy your total revenue. The customers flee faster than the price rises. The math completely works against you.
So you'd actually want to lower prices.
Yes. If you want to increase revenue on an elastic good, you actually need to cut your price. You make less money per individual item, but you attract such a massive influx of new buyers, fleeing your more expensive competitors, that your overall revenue goes up.
Let's apply this to a real-world scenario from the text, going back to city politics. Bethlehem, Pennsylvania had a problem.
The parking meters.
Yes. People were constantly parking at expired meters because the fine was only $10. It was literally cheaper to risk the ticket than pay for a garage.
A classic incentive problem.
So the city decided to raise the fine to $15. Their stated goal was twofold, just like the soda tax: discourage illegal parking and raise an extra $400,000 to help fund a brand new $5.9 million parking garage.
It is the exact same paradox. The city council's hopes are completely divorced from the economic reality, because those two goals are mathematically exclusive, depending entirely on elasticity.
Right. If the demand for parking illegally is elastic, meaning drivers have other options like walking further or taking a bus, then raising the fine to $15 will work brilliantly as a deterrent.
The streets will clear up instantly.
But if they stop parking illegally, the city collects 0 fines. They don't get a dime toward their new garage.
Exactly. Now, play out the alternative. What if the demand is inelastic? What if people are so desperate for downtown parking that a $15 fine is just seen as the cost of doing business?
Then the city makes an absolute fortune in fines and easily builds their new garage, but the streets remain completely clogged with illegally parked cars.
The deterrent failed completely. The underlying elasticity dictates which of the city's goals actually succeeds and which one fails. You can't have both.
Those ripple effects get even more complicated when you realize that changing the price of one thing inherently changes human behavior around other things.
Right. Up until now, we've only talked about how a product's own price affects its demand.
Like, if parking becomes $15, I might just stop going to the downtown restaurants entirely. How do economists measure that kind of collateral damage?
For your exam, you need to know two other types of elasticity that measure these broader relationships.
Let's do it.
First is cross-price elasticity of demand. This measures how the quantity demanded of one good responds to a change in the price of a completely different good.
So how does a price hike on Samsung Galaxy phones affect the demand for Apple iPhones?
Exactly that. If Samsung raises its prices and suddenly the demand for iPhones surges, the formula gives you a positive number.
Okay.
A positive cross-price elasticity means the two goods are substitutes. Consumers simply swapped one for the other.
But what if Apple raises the price of the iPhone itself, and suddenly the demand for Apple AirPods drops?
Then the math will give you a negative number. A negative cross-price elasticity means the goods are complements. They are used together.
Like a package deal.
Right. If you buy less of one, you automatically buy less of the other. And the text actually highlights a really surprising finding regarding this. Scanner data from grocery stores shows that wine and spirits have a negative cross-price elasticity with beer.
Wait, really? I would have assumed they were substitutes. Like, if beer gets too expensive, you just buy wine for the weekend.
I know, right? The data tells a totally different story. They are complements. When the price of wine goes up, people actually buy less beer.
That is so weird.
It turns out consumers often purchase them together for parties or gatherings, treating them as a combined entertainment package rather than direct substitutes.
That is fascinating. We also need to cover income elasticity. This measures how your demand for a good changes not based on price, but based on your paycheck.
Right. When you get richer, do you buy more of something or less?
For most things, it's more. If your income goes up and you buy more of a product, economists call it a normal good. The math gives you a positive number.
But there are crucial exceptions, known as inferior goods.
Let's unpack the psychology of an inferior good, because it's not just about buying less.
No, it's very specific.
Like, if you get a huge promotion and double your salary, you're probably going to stop buying cheap, high-fat ground beef and start buying quality steak.
Naturally.
Your income went up, but your demand for the ground beef went down, giving you a negative income elasticity.
The key to understanding inferior goods for your exam is recognizing them as compromise goods. We only buy them because we are constrained by a strict budget.
We don't actually prefer them.
Exactly. The moment that budget constraint is lifted by a higher income, we immediately abandon the compromise for our true preference.
Elasticity really is a universal tool for measuring human responsiveness to changing incentives.
Mm.
And the most mind-blowing example of this in the sources wasn't about groceries or parking meters.
No, it was about catching criminals.
Yeah.
The Danish crime study is a brilliant expansion of the concept. Researchers at the University of Copenhagen analyzed an expansion of Denmark's DNA database for criminals. The goal was to deter crime by increasing the probability that an offender would get caught. And they actually calculated the elasticity of crime.
The elasticity of crime. That sounds like a sci-fi movie.
I know. But they found that a 1% higher probability of detection reduced crime by more than 2%.
Wow. So the elasticity of crime with respect to the probability of getting caught is -2.
Which means it's highly elastic. Criminals, much like shoppers, are incredibly responsive to the risk of detection and the changing price of committing a crime.
It proves elasticity isn't just a corporate pricing tool. It's a fundamental measure of human behavior.
It really is.
We have covered a massive amount of ground today. Let's do a quick exam recap, your ultimate cheat sheet.
Good idea.
First, remember the escape route analogy. Elastic means you have lots of escape routes and are highly responsive to price changes. Inelastic means you are trapped.
Second, avoid the unit trap. Don't just rely on slope. Use the midpoint formula. Change in quantity over average quantity divided by change in price over average price.
Third, memorize the determinants. Substitutes, time, luxury versus necessity, market definition, and budget share.
And finally, when you think about total revenue, remember the Bethlehem parking meters. Raising prices on an inelastic good makes you money, but raising them on an elastic good ruins your revenue.
Perfect.
I want to leave you with one final provocative thought to mull over before your test, drawn right from the text.
Go for it.
It's about the disappearing American family farm.
This is a wild application of the theory.
Since 1950, agricultural technology has exploded. Better seeds, advanced tractors, incredibly efficient fertilizers. The supply of food, particularly staples like wheat, absolutely skyrocketed.
Now, normally we view incredible productivity as a triumph.
Right, but consider the elasticity of wheat. Food is a necessity, so its price elasticity is very low. It's heavily inelastic. Furthermore, its income elasticity is also extremely low. Even if Americans get much wealthier, they don't suddenly eat 10 times more bread.
Because there is a physical limit. You can only eat so many sandwiches in a day, no matter how cheap the bread is.
Precisely. So you have a massive historic increase in the supply of wheat, slamming directly into an inelastic, unmoving demand curve.
Oh.
Yeah. People weren't going to buy substantially more wheat, period. The only way the market could possibly absorb all that extra supply was for the price to absolutely crash. And it did.
Wow.
The price of wheat plummeted so far that only the absolute largest, most hyper-efficient corporate farming conglomerates could survive the razor-thin margins. Millions of small family farms went bankrupt and vanished from the landscape.
It wasn't a failure of farming that destroyed the family farm. It was the unintended consequence of their own brilliant success.
The final question to ponder is this. Could the very technological efficiency and innovation we celebrate in modern society be the exact mechanism that destroys an industry simply because that industry is trapped by the invisible, unforgiving laws of inelastic demand?
Man, from soda taxes trying to balance health and wealth to farmers innovating themselves out of a job, that economic landscape is murky indeed.
Really is.
Good luck on your exam. You've got this. We'll see you on the next deep dive.